My name is Bryan Wosczyna. I'm the president of the Rocky Hill Chamber. Thank you for joining us. The Rocky Hill Chamber is proud to present this program to help get the information out to voters. I want to thank the candidates for meeting with me today and Rocky Hill Community Television for the use of this great facility. Today we are joined by Democratic candidate for mayor, Bill O'Sullivan. Thank you for joining us, Bill.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to start by hearing a little bit about you. Can you tell our audience about your background and what brought you to running for mayor here today?
Sure. Can I talk about my family too? As
Absolutely.
Part of it? Okay. I've lived in town since 1986, which is when I got married. My wife, Joy, is the longtime music director at St. James Church. We are empty nesters with 3 grown kids. My older daughter, Christina, works for Hulu in film editing. Our son, Andy, is a third-year student at the UConn School of Law, and our daughter, Mary, is an oncology nurse. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing since 1990. I work in a firm, 5-attorney firm, which is called OSullivan, McCormick, Jensen, and Bliss. My practice is primarily representing small businesses and business owners in resolving business disputes. I handle a lot of cases, partner versus partner, basically small business breakups. That's probably the major part of what I do, but I handle a wide range of business disputes as well. I've been very active in bar-related activities. That's bar with a capital B. I've had leadership positions in the Connecticut Bar Association. I've done a fair amount of lecturing and publishing, and a year ago I completed 9 years of service on the Statewide Grievance Committee, which is the body that enforces the ethical obligations for attorneys. So how I got here is about 8 years ago or so, our 2 older kids were away at college, and our younger daughter was a junior in high school. And I had the sense that I had a little more time on my hands than I previously had. I wasn't spending the weekends at soccer games and that sort of thing. And I had the notion that I'd like to start getting involved in the town a little bit more. And I learned that there was an opening on the Economic Development Commission. So I put in my name for that and was appointed. Served there for 1 term, and after that I got involved on the Planning and Zoning Commission, had a term there, and some people said, you ought to run for town council. And so I ran 4 years ago on Claudia Bale's slate and was elected and was reelected. And then almost a year and a half ago, Claudia was appointed a Superior Court judge. So our deputy mayor, Joe Kohanek, was elevated to mayor. I was appointed deputy mayor, and Joe has chosen not to run this fall for mayor, and here we are.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's talk about some goals. What are the first 3 goals that you want to accomplish if you're elected mayor?
Sure. So I'll give you my 3 primary goals. So one of them has to do with the community senior center addition and really bringing that to fruition. As you know, the voters approved a referendum allowing the money to be spent for that. We've made a great deal of progress on advancing that project. We've hired an architect, we've hired a project manager, and last month the council approved a design concept for the expansion. They're now working on putting together a budget and kind of ensuring that we can get what we want for the money that was approved. So our hope is that during the winter months we'll have that budget nailed down, that we'll be able to put it out to bid and break ground middle next year. So seeing that project to actually groundbreaking and then opening is one major goal. A second one has to do with one of the referendum items this fall. As I'm sure most people know, that the town has an opportunity to buy Straska Farm for the sum of $7 million. My sense is that there is very, very broad support for it, and so I'm operating under the assumption that that'll be passed. So if that does happen, if the voters want to move forward with it, that's not going to be a self-executing project. There's going to be a lot of work to actually make that happen. It's 85 acres, about a quarter of it is wetlands. We'll need to figure out which part of it is farmable and which part of it is not, because under the referendum, it's for farmland preservation and open space. So which is which? The farmable part, we'll have to identify it, we'll have to mark it, we'll have to survey it, figure out who we're going to make it available to. Do we want to lease the whole thing to one farmer? Do we want to break it up to multiple leases to multiple farmers? Do we want to carve out maybe a community garden sort of a thing? A lot of decision making there. So what will be the process for deciding who gets access to the land? If it's one tenant, if it's multiple tenants, if we're going to have multiple people in town potentially having gardens, how do you decide who gets what? Then you have to lay out the boundaries on who has what on the ground. You have to create access paths for people to get to their plots. Many, many moving parts here. And then on the wetlands part, we have to take a look. Does that lend itself to recreation where people could actually walk on it and use it? Does it lend itself to walking paths, hiking and that sort of thing? Is the environment capable of that type of use? Because there's a lot of wetlands. But to figure that out, if it is, we have to mark paths. It's going to be a huge project. So the voting part is really just the first step in a great deal of work. So that's my second priority. Co-equal. I have three. I'm not putting a hierarchy here. The third item has to do with the Ames property, which is something that the voters talk about quite a bit. As we know, it's been sitting there vacant for many, many years. The owner and the town and the people all share an interest in seeing that put to a more productive use. So I would be very interested in having a very active and proactive dialogue with the owner, brainstorming about what we can do to try to turn that into something that's really an asset for everybody.
Excellent. Well, my next question is about business, and that can tie a little bit into the Ames property. But what do you think about the business climate currently in Rocky Hill, and how will you attract and retain businesses that are currently here?
So, it was recently brought to my attention, and I did a little research to verify it. Based on data collected by the state, the Office of Policy and Management, they did a ranking of Connecticut's 169 municipalities based on what percentage of their tax base is commercial and industrial property versus homeowner property. And out of those 169 cities and towns, Rocky Hill was 8th in terms of having the highest percentage that's business and industrial. And that's really extraordinary for a town Rocky Hill size, because a lot of the ones ahead of us are cities like Hartford and New Haven, and then you have Rocky Hill, really up in that upper echelon. So that tells you that Rocky Hill is known and is established as a very attractive location for business. So, so I think that speaks very well of the reputation that we already have. In terms of what we can do to attract and retain, I think one of the best things you can do is have a well-run town that has a fair tax rate. And those are things that we have in this town. Our mill rate is very, very favorable. If you compare it to our neighbors, it's among the lowest. I think the quality of our services speaks for itself. My general sense in talking to the voters on my rounds is that people are generally very happy with their experience and with the services and amenities we have in town. So getting that word out, this is a good place to live, it's a good place to do business, we have an excellent location. I think continue doing what we're doing, we have a very solid foundation.
Excellent. Well, speaking of the mill rate, let's talk about taxes. Where do you think we can cut to save some money for the town, and is there anything that you see needs more funding at this moment?
Sure. So since I've been on town council for 4 years, I've been through 4 budget years, 4 budget cycles. And so I've seen how it works. And the process that we have every spring during budget season is every single department head makes a presentation to the council, basically explaining their ask and justifying what it is they think they need. And the process is very interactive, and I think sometimes we put them through the mill a little bit. So if there's an open position that needs to be filled, we'll ask them, well, are you sure you need to fill that position? Do you need it at all? Can you cut it to part-time? Can you postpone it for 6 months? That sort of thing. So we really do our homework in that regard, and the department heads do as well, actually, because they know what to expect. If someone wants a new piece of equipment, are you sure you can't squeeze another year out of what you got? Buy some more duct tape or whatever. They really have to justify it. And I would say that this past budget season, I was struck by, I think the most of my 4 years, how they seem to have gotten the message that the requests were very, very reasonable, very measured, but some of them we didn't even have any questions. I mean, the Democrats nor the Republicans, frankly, had any questions or concerns because the requests were so modest. So I don't see a lot in terms of, is there fat when you're talking about things that we can cut. One thing that we're mindful of is the cost of health care for employees. That's something that we've been focusing on a little bit more recently, on perhaps getting to lower cost alternatives such as high deductible plans with a health savings account, that sort of thing. New hires in town are now in a 401k retirement rather than a defined benefit plan, so that's something that lays the groundwork for some savings as well. And I think another important thing is to preserve and maintain the town assets in a sensible way. One example of that is the other referendum item we have this fall is for the road improvement project, really phase 2. And that's something that I don't think that we stayed on top of for many, many years. When this project began about 6 years ago, we had a lot of roads in really, really rough shape. And so what I'd like to see happen is, first of all, I really hope the voters will approve the second phase. Let's get our roads up to snuff, but then we have to make a sustained commitment year in and year out to invest enough money to keep them in maintenance mode so we're not waiting for serious deterioration and then having to do a redo. So all the things I'm talking about, they're not instant tax cuts, so to speak. It's not instant gratification. I mean, you really have to play the long game when you're talking about sensible finance and honest taxing, and that is managing your resources and planning things out for the future.
Excellent. Let's move to seniors. Seniors are an important part of our community. What do you feel are the needs of our seniors today, and how can you help them thrive in Rocky Hill?
I think we have to be honest that one of the real challenges for a lot of seniors is loneliness. No longer having the interaction of going to the workplace from day to day. Many of them are no longer living with their loved ones. And one of the really important things that a town can do as a community is providing that sense of community and connectedness for the seniors. And that's really where the community and senior center plays such an important part. So again, that ties into one of the referendum items that we've already touched on, and that is the expansion of the community center. More offerings, more opportunities, not just for the seniors, but really intergenerational concepts as well. That's a lot of what's being discussed. Having kids programs, senior programs, have people all together. And again, type of programming that seniors want that's appropriate and appreciated. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do.
From seniors, let's move to education. Both candidates have advertised support for education. In the past few years, we've improved the high school. We've built a new intermediate school. What do you feel still needs improvement, and how will you accomplish that? Sure.
So, again, one thing about Rocky Hill is on the education side, the taxpayers really get a good bang for their buck. When you look at Rocky Hill ranked with its peer groups in terms of size and economic profile, we tend to be very, very low in terms of per student spending and very, very high in student achievement. And it's really a tribute to our education, everyone who's involved in the education system in Rocky Hill. So that's something that we can all take a lot of pride in. But as far as actual improvements, so yes, we have a rebuilt to new high school. We have a brand new intermediate school. We do have a couple of needs coming down the pike, pretty soon for the other schools, which are obviously are a lot older. New roofs, new HVAC systems, some other things that are necessary for the other grade schools, for Stevens and West Hill. Those are things that are being evaluated right now, and that's something that we're going to have to look at in the near future.
You kind of touched on these. The ballot questions this year, we're going to have 2 referendums on there. One is to purchase the land off New Britain Ave, and the other is to bond money for paving projects. It sounds like you're in favor of both of these. That was kind of the question. And is there anything you could tell the voters that you haven't already spoke about to help them decide if they should vote yes or no on them?
Sure. So just some of the details on both of those. So the road improvement project, again, it goes back about 6 years ago when our staff did a street-by-street analysis of pretty much every stretch of road in the town. Not the state highways, because that's state jurisdiction, so it wouldn't include Main Street or the Shunpike and the like, but pretty much every other street, which is about 62 miles of streets. And they put together a map with color codage based on the condition of each stretch of road, and laying out kind of a hierarchy of urgency, shall we say, and laying out a master plan of what needs to be done where over a period of time. So when they did that work about 6 or 7 years ago, they estimated that would cost about $20 million to do the whole thing. The decision was made at that time rather than ask the voters to approve the whole $20 million, to break it into 2 phases and ask for $10 million. So phase 1, that first $10 million was approved, and we're wrapping up that first phase, wrapping up that first 30 miles or so. So now we're at phase 2, the second $10 million of the 20, and that is to get the remaining streets in town taken care of, and the parking lots. So the parking lots and the parks and the schools. So we get everything, in good condition. So and again, that'll probably be about another 5 or 6 year process. So by the time that's done, pretty much all the streets in town will have been done within 12 years or so, and will then be in maintenance mode. This is something that it just makes a lot of sense. Half the town was done. We need to bring the other half into shape as well. And again, once we're there, we really need to be in maintenance mode. Let's conserve our assets. I think good roads are a real basic, very core municipal function. So let's do it. And again, as far as the other referendum item, which is question number 2 on Straska Farm, yes, I'm strongly in favor of it. Yes, we need development in town to continue to build the tax base and to minimize the burden on homeowners, but we don't want to forget our roots as a farm town. We don't want to feel overburdened and overgrown, and this is a great opportunity to support our farmers and to keep the reins a little bit on runaway growth in town. And again, having farms active in this town, in particular where people are much more interested in farm to table and cooking and eating fresh, it's a very good thing, and we don't want to lose that. So strongly in favor of both referendum items.
In closing, is there anything you want to tell our viewers at home that you haven't touched on yet?
Sure. I'd like the voters to know that the process that got me here was not part of political ambitions or any master plan or scheme for world domination or anything like that. I was just a citizen who was interested in getting involved. I had a little extra time on my hands. I'm someone who likes to be involved in things anyway. And kind of step by step, I took each of these tasks very, very seriously. I approached them very diligently. I got good feedback from people on what I was doing, and I got a lot of encouragement to try to take the next step. So my pledge to the Rocky Hill voters is if you find me worthy to take this next step as mayor, I will continue to approach it the way I've approached these other steps along the way. I've learned quite a bit. I'm very open to learning from people. I talk, but I also listen. I take my responsibilities very seriously. I've done that to this point, and I will do the same thing if I have your confidence and you do vote me as mayor. Thank you.
Bill, on behalf of the Rocky Hill Chamber of Commerce, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I'd also like to thank everyone working behind the scenes, Michael Toole, Andy Brescia from Rocky Hill Community TV. And if you want to find out more about the Rocky Hill Chamber of Commerce, you could do that at rhchamber.org. Go support a Rocky Hill business today.